an episode dedicated to the coaching staff. That's what we have today here on Locked On Boston College.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Boston College. I am your host, AJ Black. Today's episode is brought to you by Sonos. Sonos is the official sponsor of ESPN College Football. Go to Sonos.com to learn more. On today's show, thank you all for listening. We are going to talk about Jeff Hafley and his staff. We'll be joined by Mitch Wolfe, who kind of give us an overview of the struggles of Jeff Hafley and Frank Cignetti and Matt Applebaum at different points during the season. But to kick it off, let's get into some of the rumors that are going around. I have now seen multiple reports saying that Jeff Hafley is a candidate for multiple head coaching jobs. Now, first person that tweeted it out was footballscoop.com, part of the SI brand. They've been for a while one of the more reliable coaching news outlets. They have their times where they're right, times where they're wrong. He was listed as a candidate along with the head coach from Fresno State, the head coach of Justin Wilcox of Callan DeBoer of Fresno State, and Brian Harrison of Auburn. Those are the four names that Football Scoop had. I just don't see that, and I'll explain in a little bit. But it wasn't just this. There was other reports. Pete Thamel, who usually has his finger on the pulse, he reported today, he had different tiers of coaches that, schools like Florida, schools like LSU, even schools like Virginia Tech or Washington might be looking at. And then, the top tiers are the Luke Fickles, the Matt Campbells of the world, the Lane Kiffins, so those established head coaches that you could get. And then right below them, there was Jeff Hafley again. He was on there, with Dave Clawson and a few other mid-level coaches that have had some success, but aren't as established as those top-tier coaches. And the bottom was some of the coordinators, like Georgia's defensive coordinator, and there's a few other coordinators that were listed as possible options as well. Now, if you're a Boston College fan, that could get you nervous about Jeff Hafley possibly jumping to another job. Like, you see this, you're like, oh gosh, is he already going to go in 2 years to a new position? I don't think he will, and here is why. Okay, so there's two levels of jobs, kind of like what Thamel put out there. There's the top jobs. That's the Floridas, the LSUs, the USCs right now. They're not going to look at Jeff Hafley. Just putting it out there blankly, they're not going to look at Jeff Hafley because Florida, who just fired Dan Mullen, just fired a head coach who just lost the SEC championship last year. How would you sell to your fan base that you're hiring a coach that is 12-11 in 2 years? That you can't do that, or 12-10 in 2 years. That the fan base would kill the AD Scott Strickland. He's never going to go to Florida. They would never pick that. They're going to go for someone big. So it's not going to be at school like Florida. Same thing with LSU and USC. They're going for home run hires, established names from lower schools that have done some big things that they can build up. And it doesn't even have to be lower schools. It's just schools that they can outspend on. That name will not be Jeff Hafley. The second thing, the second group of schools like Virginia Tech, schools like Washington, again, I don't see it. I don't see Hafley jumping at these schools, because Hafley has said all along, and I know some of it's coach speak, but he's happy here and that he wants to build something here. He's got younger kids. He's got kids that are, elementary school age. We'll talk about this with Mitch in a little bit. He's not going to jump for these programs, man. He's not going to want to go across country and uproot his entire family. So Washington doesn't make sense either. And Virginia Tech is sort of a peer school. Like, they could pay a little bit more, but does Hafley really want to uproot everything he's done to go to one of these schools? And again, Virginia Tech is not going to hire a coach that is 12-10. Just going to put that out there. Okay. So then why is Hafley's name getting batted about? Thinking, this seems early. He hasn't done much yet. He hasn't won he has no top 25 wins. He hasn't put together a season where he's had more than 6 wins so far. Why is his name being batted about? Now, just use your critical thinking skills here. I know you can. It's his agent. I'm sure his agent is the one reaching out and putting his name out there everywhere. And why would his agent put his name out there? Sure, it could be to try to get a new job, but more likely it's to get him more money from Boston College. This is the typical coaching system that this agent probably, and again, I don't have any proof this is what's happening. This is my guess. That the agent is trying to get a raise from BC because they're like, hey, look at all this interest. We're going to keep them at BC, right? They're going to try to get some more money out of them. So to me, it just strikes me as buzz coming from Hafley's agent. Now, there will be other coaches that come along and other programs that will be better fits for Hafley. Now, if Michigan moved on past Jim Harbaugh, or if Michigan State decided that their coach wasn't going to get a 9-year, like $90 million contract or whatever they would look at, they could go after Hafley, but I don't see it yet. And if Penn State, for some reason, James Franklin goes somewhere, I still don't see it. I don't think it's the right fit right now. Give me another year and maybe some more success. I mean, listen to what he's been saying at press conferences. Like, he's learning how to be a coach. He's still making mistakes. Bigger programs do not want a coach that's at that level right now. So I do not worry that Hafley at this point is going anywhere. You might see some of his assistants start to move around maybe a little bit, but I don't think the head coach is going anywhere. And that's my thoughts about that. We'll talk more about how he's been performing with Mitch Wolfe in just a moment. All right, college football fanatics, have you heard about PrizePicks? PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. I love this, and I know you will too. I played PrizePicks all weekend long, and it was so much fun. You get to pick as many players in any sport as you want. You pick the over and under on their statistics, whether it's yards thrown, points scored, interceptions, rushing yards. You could find anything. And you can find players from mid-majors along with the Power 5. And when you head on over to PrizePicks and try it out, you just need to make sure you use promo code LOCKEDON when you make your initial deposit up to $100. They're going to match you 100%. How are you going to beat that? PrizePicks has an award-winning app on both the App Store and Google Play. It is so easy to use and so fun. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. PrizePicks is safe and offers fast withdrawals, so if you start winning, you can cash a little easier. Don't hesitate. Check out PrizePicks.com today and use promo code LOCKEDON, or go to your App Store and download the app today. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. This is it, the putt to win the tournament. If you sink it, the championship is yours. But on your backswing, your hat falls over your eyes. Is this how you're running your business? Poor visibility because you're still relying on spreadsheets and outdated finance software? To see the full picture, you need to upgrade to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite is the #1 cloud financial system to power the growth of your business. With visibility and control of your financials, inventory, HR, planning, budgeting, and more, NetSuite is everything. They do everything for you and they'll help your business grow all in one place. NetSuite can automate your processes and close your books in no time while staying well ahead of your competition. 93% of businesses surveyed increase their visibility and control after upgrading to NetSuite. Head on over to netsuite.com/LockedOnNCAA for special end-year financing on the #1 financial system for growing business. Again, that is netsuite.com/LockedOnNCAA. netsuite.com/LockedOnNCAA. Make sure to check them out today. This is Locked On Boston College. AJ Black. Happy Tuesday, everyone. We are here to continue our discussion of Florida State and Boston College. Again, Boston College lost 26-23 at Alumni Stadium on Saturday. Joined with me again is Mitch Wolfe, staff writer. How's it going, Mitch?
It's going good. I know some people might be disappointed that we're not going to spend the time ragging on UMass or UConn or Colorado State for, I think, going 0-3 this weekend. But, I think we have some more pressing concerns to discuss.
Yes. So before we get into this, let me just preface this. We have the UMass, the UConn, and the Steve Addazio stuff every week. It's fun. We do it for fun. And some people don't like it, and that's fine. This week, we're going to take a break from it. Some of you have said you wished for a break. It's a perfect week because who cares what's going on with UMass, UConn, and Addazio this week? Except maybe if Addazio got hired by Florida, which I would die, but that's not happening. So anyways, the coaching discussion we're going to get into today is our own coaching discussion. We're going to talk about Boston College because let me just go through some of the topics I have seen on social media, on message boards, all over the place. Hafley's honeymoon is over. Fire Frank Cignetti. Fire Frank Applebaum. Is Hafley the new Adazio? Okay, we're into the end of year 2. Hafley is on the verge of possibly winning 7 games, possibly still winning 8 games. Mitch, where are you at with this staff right now?
Well, the other problem with that is, a week or so ago, the message boards were, should be, raising money to make sure we can extend Hafley and doesn't get poached by Washington or USC or whatever. So, it's amazing how fickle people can be with just, a few days later where it's gone from, we need to figure out a way to extend this guy and keep him here. And now it's fire people and all that stuff. So that's my 2 cents on that. But I'll say this. I think that there is some room to criticize Frank Cignetti and Matt Applebaum. I'll start with Applebaum because, the big thing about him coming in was, we're going to install this new blocking schemes, like it's a zone blocking scheme for the run game. And that should help the offensive lineman. And I'm not sure that it really has. Alec Lindstrom and Zion Johnson are still very good players. Christian Mahogany has developed really well this year. But like we talked about yesterday, the tackles haven't really done anything. And again, part of the issue is Tyler Vrabel's health. But besides that point, the run game hasn't really been dominant aside from against, FCS and group of 5 opponents. But, the offensive line has not been, they've been disappointing, as I said, in yesterday's episode. So that's part of the problem. The other issue is, with Frank Cignetti, you bring him in, he installs this quote, more pro style offense that it's, it has its nice days, against Georgia Tech, it had some nice plays, there were some decent moments against Virginia Tech, but then there's also bad parts, think about basically any time Dennis Grosel was in a quarterback. And I think the issue with running a quote, pro style offense is at college, there's not a lot of room for error because you're trying to execute these very complex schemes that you're kind of relying on your players to be able to beat the other guys. And there are just going to be games where BC does not have the athletes to compete with that. And that was kind of the case against Florida State. So, there were times obviously when the offensive line was getting beat up by their defensive ends, and that was a big problem. And then there were other times where they did hold on pass protection, but the wide receivers just weren't getting open. And so, I think there is definitely room to criticize Frank Cignetti in terms of maybe being a little too reliant on the run game, especially in the red zone. I think they should be throwing there a little more, and especially on third downs. And I think he is a little too reliant on the intermediate and deep passing game. This was an issue we saw with Dennis Grosel quarterback. It's like they were still just trying to run the same offense, which required a lot of deeper passing concepts that Grosel couldn't execute. And against Florida State, Jurkovec did not have time to. So, I would like him to, I've been saying this for weeks now, but just like install more of a quick game, scheme, like get some plays that are, quote, more gimmicky, but they just, you're taking free yards when you can get them, some like screens, some RPOs, some of that kind of stuff where it's just like, yeah, like you can't run your whole game on it, but you can do it to, just get a few yards here and there and not have to, just beat down the opponent and beat yourself up for it too.
Yeah. I think it's fair to criticize where Cignetti is and Applebaum. I mean, it is what it is. Like you've seen this offense, under Grosel, you have to like basically compartmentalize the season, right? You have those 4 games under Grosel where I still don't believe no matter what you did with him, you're not going to be able to get success. And then you have the Jurkovec time, and now we're 1-1 basically with Jurkovec. How is he going to perform against Wake Forest? How is Cignetti going to, adjust to what we saw? Now, that being said, Wake Forest's defense is not what Florida State's is. I mean, Florida State, I think people are like, oh, Florida State's defense is crap. Florida State's defense has played much better at different points in the season, and they have better weapons than anything Wake Forest has. But it'll be interesting to see what he brings out at the end of the year against a team like Wake Forest.
Yeah, like you said, Wake's defense does not really have any stars. It's been pretty porous throughout the whole season, no matter the opponent. Army put up 56, NC State put up a ton of points, and BC's offense has really struggled against the better defenses in this conference. I mean, the Syracuse game aside, when it was just that was a mess. But Clemson gave them a lot of issues. NC State gave them a lot of issues. Again, Louisville, there's not really no excuse there. But yeah, I mean, I think they need to start just kind of like just incorporating some new concepts, because I'm wondering if, there are certain plays where if you're watching BC, you can kind of really pretty accurately predict what's going to happen. Like there are certain formations, just certain looks they gave where you're like, all right, I know what's going to happen here. And I think they need to maybe start just having some more concepts in there to, make sure the defense isn't keying in on certain tendencies so accurately. And I think that's part of the problem with, why guys were struggling to get open against Florida State, maybe just because they, had a really good handle on what concepts BC was going to be running in the passing game. But I do want to say this. I don't think the answer right now is to fire Frank Cignetti. I think that Hafley is not the kind of person to make a change just for the sake of making a change. I think that, and I think especially given his youth and experience as a coach, and especially on the offensive side, he wants somebody who has been in the game for a long time, has done his fair share of play calling, and he wants somebody that he can rely on to not cripple them. And I know there were some mistakes and questionable decisions against Florida State, but I think for the most part they do a decent job running this offense.
And I think it's important. I brought this up to Mitch on text too, for the folks that are, hashtag fire Cignetti and putting up memes about Cignetti. I saw a couple BC fan posts about that. That to remember if you lose Frank Cignetti, you need to remember who he brought in. And he was absolutely number one, the reason Phil Jurkovec came here. And it wasn't Hafley, it was Cignetti. They were Pittsburgh boys. They knew each other. And so if you lose Cignetti, if you fire him because you're aggravated at his play calling, there's that odds of you losing Phil Jurkovec all of a sudden skyrockets, because I'm sure he's pissed off that you lose your offensive coordinator. Now, as I said, I think changes need to be made in terms of how you schematically look at things, and he needs to figure some stuff out. But just for those folks that are at home going, the BC team's not going to be good until they fire Cignetti. You can't be, I want to fire Cignetti and we need to also have Phil Jurkovec back and still think the same things are going to happen. It's not, that's a bet. You're going to lose Jurkovec if Cignetti goes. Let's talk about the honeymoon period is over and that he's the new Adazio, which I think is ridiculous, but whatever. Tell me your thoughts about Jeff Hafley as a head coach.
I mean, I think that saying he's the new Adazio is ridiculous. I think a lot of people are pointing to his decision to call timeout when they were punting and then change his mind to go for it and saying, oh, we would kill Adazio for this. And I think they're probably right. And I think, that was probably not the best decision. And they might cite the timeout he called on a 2-point conversion, which I'm okay with that because I think they wanted a certain look from the defense. They didn't get it. So he called the timeout to say all right, no, we're going to do something different. And I don't think they got it, but that's not the point. That's not the point. I think you could argue maybe about decision to go for it early in the game where they went for it on fourth and they're inside the 5 and didn't get it. But I think going for it at that point was fine. But, I think we do have to remember that this is a hard job. There are, only a few hundred people that are, paid to coach football at the highest level. And, like any job, they are going to make mistakes. And I think, this is Hafley's second season of being a head coach at any level. So he's still learning a little bit. I'm not, maybe the honeymoon period is a bit of a loaded phrase. I think that, next year it's all right, we need to not have these kind of things happen anymore. But, I think that with, like I was saying in the other episode, it might've been today or today's episode or yesterday's, but I think that if a Adazio team is down by this much, there's no way they come back just because that just wasn't in his mojo. And I think that, I think he's connected with this team. I think the team really respects and likes him. So I think that there's really no reason to, start holding him to a different standard because I think he in general is quite a very good coach. I don't think there's any reason to be moving on from him. And with that being said, I still think it is too early for other teams really to come calling for him. And I, like you've said, I just don't see him really uprooting his family this quickly to take a job that, let's say we're talking about a job that's like Washington or TCU or Virginia Tech. That's a little more on the level of BC as opposed to the Floridas, the USCs, the LSUs. That's, you could make arguments, but that's a pretty lateral, maybe a slight upgrade of a move. And I don't think, first of all, I don't think those offers are going to come. And I don't think he's going to get offers from places like Florida, USC or LSU, because they're looking for head coaches with a lot more experience and just frankly, a lot more proven success at the college level.
Right. I was thinking the same thing. So first of all, let me just jump back in with the youth, right? He's been a coach for 20 games as a head coach. So, all of the fans out there, we know, deep in your heart, when he was hired, he was a young coach. The philosophy, the thought about him coming in was, hey, Jeff Hafley is a young coach. He's going to be able to bring a lot of enthusiasm, but he's young. Now, he had success last year. He was 6-5, but battled in some really tough games. But people then forgot how young he was. Like, and it's not an excuse. It's the facts. Like, I'm not telling you like to make an excuse for him. Like, that's exactly where he is. He's a young coach and he's going to make those mistakes, as Mitch said. Now, and to jump into the other schools that are looking at, like potentially looking at him, I totally agree. Right. Like, he has 2 younger kids, like a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. He just bought a house in Newton. I think it was Newton. He's got kids enrolled in school. He's not going to move them halfway across the country for a marginally better job. And as Mitch said too, they're not going to Florida. The Gators are not going to hire him. Oh my God, they just fired a guy that just
if they want to, like, more power to them. That'd be quite the thing, but I really don't think that's realistic.
They just fired a guy that won the SEC championship or was in the SEC title game last year.
Yeah.
Right. They're not going to hire a guy that's, 12-11 on his career. This is not going to happen. So, all the talk about Hafley leaving this year, I don't think you need to worry about it. As we said on yesterday's show, we talk about Djokovic leaving. I don't think we have to worry about that. I think Zay Flowers is a different discussion. We'll get to that at another point. But I think Hafley, he is what he is, and you can criticize him but you need to also put into context, right? Steve Addazio had been a head coach for how many years at Temple? He's been in the programs. He's been around. He's an old-timey coach. He's been around for years. When he was making those mistakes, he was so entrenched in what he was doing that those mistakes happen over and over and over. You watched it. You were a Boston College fan. You know exactly what I'm talking about, whether it's end of the half adjustments, end of the time management crap. You saw it all with him. Hafley's mistakes are similar. You see him happening, but you need to have the faith that he's a young coach, that he's learning from these mistakes, and that he's going to improve upon them. That's very different than where Addazio is. So that's why when I see, Hafley's a new Addazio, I think it's just lazy. Like, it's just lazy analysis.
Yeah. And I think that, if we go back to the second year of Addazio when, Tyler Murphy was the quarterback and they were still going to bowl games. And, I think people were generally still happy with Addazio. So I think in general, people just need to, calm down. It's not that bad. It really, it could be a lot worse. There are a lot of teams out there that are really bad and have really bad situations. Everything's pretty decent right now, so I wouldn't freak out much. The other thing is, like, with Hafley, like you said, like he's making these mistakes and they're still fewer and far between than when Addazio was. And at the time in Addazio's career, like, we were still not criticizing him as much for those mistakes. And, I'll say, I don't think Hafley has had, those like really dumbly surprising losses that Addazio had. Think about in 2014 where they lost to Colorado State, the Purdue in 2018, I think it was. He hasn't really had those yet. His team is pretty much, aside from, the Carousel games where it just wasn't even close. Even some of those were closer than they appeared. Like the Clemson game was close. The NC State game was close until the special teams mistake. And then in the last year, the really only blowout loss was the Virginia Tech one where, again, things kind of got away from him. And, I'm just preaching patience because, college football, it's a lot more long-term than people think. And, obviously, like you were talking about with Dan Mullen, things can move quickly, but I think that making a change just for the sake of making a change is a really harmful thing in college football, because then that harms your reputation as a school. So, people need to be a little more patient. People are going to make mistakes. BC is not probably in our lifetimes really ever going to be like have an undefeated season and be like a perfect team. I think that that's a realistic opinion to have. So, I feel like people have to admit, there's going to be games where they get beat and it does suck, but that's part of the game. Only one team can win in college, and that's just how it is.
Right,
and I'm not saying that to be defeatist. I'm just saying, like, we can acknowledge reality that, there are just aspects of Boston College as a school that prevent it from being a consistent national championship contender. But, I think that with Hafley, I think they have a better chance of improving this program to be a point where they can be consistently contending for ACC championships at least.
So final takeaways: Hafley needs to improve, but that's okay. Cignetti, they all need to improve, but we're not asked. I think we're talking about, we don't want to see a wholesale fire sale of coaches in the offensive side of the ball. Mm-hmm. Now, Mitch, where can people find you on social media?
You can find me at Mitchell T. Wolfe on Twitter, WOLFE. And like I said, we should have the bowl game projections for BC, the games they can specifically make, and the general bowl game rundown for all the bowl games in the upcoming months coming up sometime this week.
All right. Thank you, Mitch. And you can find me on Twitter at AJBlack_BC. Thank you all for listening. If this is the first time you listen to a Locked On Boston College podcast, I want to thank you. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. Make sure to follow us on YouTube. Just look up Locked On BC. You can get all your podcasts right there. And we are on Twitter. Again, Locked On BC on Twitter. Thank you all. We'll be back again on Wednesday to start talking about Wake Forest and the battle in Alumni Stadium on Senior Day. Thank you and take care.